Hello, you're the Overhead Story channel. Let's go.
I came home earlier than I was supposed to, and now I wish I hadn't. It was one of those rare workdays that ended in my favor: a canceled dinner meeting, an early flight out of Seattle, and a lucky break on I-75 with barely any traffic. I pulled into our driveway just as the sun dipped behind the neighbor's hedges. The sky was smeared with muted gold and dusty violet. It was quiet, too quiet, like the air itself was holding its breath. Our porch light was off. June usually turned it on if I was coming home late. She was meticulous about those little things. Porch lights, folded towels, a ready hug when I walked through the door. But tonight, nothing. I stepped inside and immediately noticed the silence. It wasn't the comforting stillness of a peaceful home, it was vacant. Like walking into a museum exhibit made to look like someone's house. Nothing out of place, but no life in it either. Then I heard it. Upstairs. A creak of movement, quick, urgent footsteps crossing the hardwood hallway above. Followed by the soft click of a door being shut. Not slammed, just closed. Deliberately. A few seconds passed before June appeared at the top of the stairs. She looked startled. She had that deer-in-headlights look, like she didn't expect to see me. Her hair was done, curling iron waves loosely falling over her shoulders. A little too polished for cleaning. She wore a faded sweatshirt of mine, the one with the cracked university logo, and held a bucket in one hand with a cloth draped over the other. Her cheeks were flushed, eyes wide. "Hey," she said, breathless. "You're home early." "Flight got moved up," I said, trying to read her. "No delays." She came down the stairs a little too quickly and put the bucket on the floor with a clank. "I was just cleaning," she said. "Guest room. I used bleach and some other chemicals. The smell's awful, so maybe don't go up there for a while." Her voice was high, almost casual, but her eyes were scanning me. Like she was trying to gauge if I had seen or heard anything. I hadn't even taken off my shoes yet, but I already felt like I was intruding in my own home. "Everything okay?" I asked. She nodded too fast. "Yeah. Just figured it was time to deep clean. That room's been gathering dust." I followed her into the living room. She was moving too quickly, talking too much. "It's the pine-based stuff mixed with vinegar and ammonia. It's got a kick," she continued, laughing nervously. "You don't want to go in there. Trust me, it'll knock you out." But there was no chemical scent in the air. Instead, there was something else. Subtle but distinct. Cologne. Not the kind I wore, this one was heavier, muskier, with a peppery base. It smelled expensive. It didn't belong in this house. Something in me shifted. I turned my head, slowly scanning the space like I was seeing it for the first time. That's when I saw it sitting neatly on the hallway table by the stairs. A black leather wallet. Slim. Sleek. Monogrammed. Not mine. June saw me looking. "Oh, that's Marvin's," she said quickly. "He dropped by earlier. He's been running errands all over town." "My brother Marvin." "Sure. Except Marvin lives in Chicago and hasn't visited us in almost 5 months. And he hasn't worn cologne since he gave up dating apps and moved in with his girlfriend." "You saw Marvin?" I asked, trying to sound neutral. "Yeah, just briefly. He didn't stay long," she said, a little too breezily. "Didn't want to bother me while I was in cleaning mode. I didn't even realize he left his wallet until after." I nodded, saying nothing. My eyes flicked back to the wallet. It looked pristine. Like it had just been pulled from a suit pocket. I didn't touch it. Instead, I walked into the downstairs bathroom to wash my hands. A towel hung neatly on the bar. I dried my hands, then paused. There it was, clinging to the terry cloth. A short, black strand of hair. Coarse. Thick. Not mine. Not June's. We were both blondes. The back of my neck tingled. I stepped back into the hall. June was already in the kitchen, fussing with a saucepan and moving like she'd taken a sh*T of adrenaline. She called out, "Hungry?" I was just about to reheat the stir-fry from Tuesday. I didn't answer. My feet were already moving toward the stairs. "Wait," she called. "Seriously, don't go up there. The smell, it's awful. It's nauseating." But I kept climbing. Halfway up, the scent of bleach still wasn't there. That cologne, though? It hung in the air like an accusation. I reached the top landing. My eyes locked on the guest room door. Closed. I tried the handle. Locked. I stood there, my hand resting on the knob, listening. Nothing. No movement. No creaks. Just stillness. Behind me, June was suddenly there. "Babe," she said, touching my arm lightly. "Don't." Her voice had changed. Lower. Firmer. Like she wasn't asking. "It really needs to air out. I was just about to open the window and let it sit for a few hours. Please." I looked at her. Too much lip gloss. Smudged eyeliner. A tiny red mark near her collarbone, half hidden by the sweatshirt. I noticed it only because I used to kiss that spot every morning. You okay? I asked again, softer this time. She smiled, but it didn't touch her eyes. Just tired. I overdid it with the scrubbing. I nodded, walked back down, said nothing. In the kitchen, I grabbed a glass of water and leaned against the counter as she stirred the pan with exaggerated focus. The silence stretched between us, dense and electric. I didn't mention the wallet again, or the hair, or the cologne. That night, we sat on the couch watching a sitcom neither of us laughed at. She leaned against me. I let her. My arm was around her shoulders, but it may as well have been around a stranger. I didn't ask any more questions. Not that night, but something had shifted permanently. Whatever comfort I'd found in our home before, that warm, unquestioning trust, it was gone. In its place was something unfamiliar. Something like doubt, but deeper. I wasn't angry. Not yet. But I was alert. Every word, every glance, every silence between us started to feel suspicious. It had started with a lie. Just one. But I already knew this was only the beginning. Sometimes the past doesn't echo. It waits. And when it's ready, it detonates. That night, after June fell asleep, I sat in the dark at my desk with the glow of the monitor reflecting off my glasses. I hadn't touched my keyboard in an hour. My work was open, some half-finished spreadsheet for next quarter's numbers, but the numbers didn't matter anymore. My eyes were watching the cursor blink on a blank line like it was tapping out a warning, something's wrong. The house was quiet again. But it didn't feel like silence, it felt like cover. A soundproof layer of routine laid carefully over secrets. I kept running through what happened when I walked in earlier, the footsteps, the locked door, the cologne, the black wallet. And June. That moment when she caught me looking at the wallet, it replayed in my head like a highlight reel. The catch in her breath. The way she moved closer, a little too fast, like she was stepping between me and a truth I hadn't asked for. The way she smiled without meaning it. I wasn't stupid. I just hadn't wanted to believe it before. That's the thing about trust, you don't lose it all at once. It thins out slowly until one day it snaps like a worn-out rope. And now it was snapping. My mind wouldn't stop pulling at the threads. The little moments I had brushed off suddenly stood out like neon signs. There was that night 3 weeks ago when she said she was meeting Laura from yoga for dinner. I remember because I'd asked if she wanted me to pick up her favorite Thai curry on the way home and she had laughed, tight and weird, and said, "No, I've got plans, remember?" She left wearing heels and that gray dress with the deep back, the one she never wears to yoga or casual dinners. She didn't come home until almost 1 a.m., claimed the restaurant had closed late. Her lipstick was gone, but her perfume wasn't. She'd showered before coming to bed. I thought that was odd, she doesn't usually shower that late. Then there was the girls' weekend last month in Asheville. Supposedly 4 of them went, but when I asked to see pictures, she said they'd barely taken any because they were so busy enjoying the moment. That's not how June works. She documents everything: sunsets, cocktails, sunsets with cocktails. But nothing from that trip. And her phone. That had changed too. She used to leave it anywhere. Now it was always face down. The passcode had changed. Once I reached for it to check the weather and she lunged like I was picking up a grenade. "Babe, just ask me. I'll check it for you," she said, her voice too loud, too fast. She laughed after, but it sounded rehearsed. I kept thinking back to the bank account too. We share one joint card for groceries and bills. Nothing major. But I get transaction notifications sent to my email. I started noticing small things that didn't make sense. Dinners at expensive restaurants downtown. Hotel bookings in the city under her name. Non-refundable reservations, she said, were gifts for coworkers. At the time, I bought it. Or I wanted to. But now, I scrolled through my inbox again and found one from 2 Saturdays ago. $82 at a place called Darrow in Pine. A trendy, upscale spot. We'd never eaten there together. I Googled the menu. Lobster risotto. Craft cocktails. The kind of place you dress up for. The kind of place where you drink slow, lean close, and pretend no one else exists. I pulled open our photo folders on the desktop. June had uploaded vacation pictures here for years. I clicked on the 2024 folder. It was empty. Strange. The one from 2023 had 96 photos. The one from 2022 had 312. We hadn't stopped taking trips. We went to the coast in March. Where were the photos? I opened the backup drive. Also empty. That wasn't like her. She once told me she saved pictures the way some people saved prayers. "They're how I remember who I was at the time," she said. Now it looked like she wanted to forget. And then there was Marvin, my brother. He'd made a few odd remarks lately. I'd brushed them off at the time, thinking he was being cynical. But now, his comments were coming back to me like sirens I'd ignored. "You and June still doing the whole everything's perfect routine?" He'd said a few weeks ago at the hardware store. I laughed, assuming he was just annoyed with his own relationship. He'd looked at me, one eyebrow raised, but didn't say more. Maybe he thought I knew. Or maybe he didn't want to be the one to tell me. There were other signs too. Too many to ignore now. The way she avoided eye contact when I asked casual questions. The way she'd suddenly started doing laundry at weird hours, like 10:30 p.m. Claiming she forgot to wash her yoga clothes. Yoga clothes that smelled faintly of cologne I didn't own. Even her appetite had changed. She'd always hated olives. But last month, she ordered a martini at a dinner we hosted for a few friends. I remember saying, "Since when do you drink those?" She smiled and said, "Oh, just trying something new." New. That word stayed with me. Back at my desk, I opened the notepad app and started typing. What changed? When did she stop being the person I trusted? Who is she with when she's not with me? The worst part wasn't the suspicion. It was the growing certainty. I hadn't caught her red-handed. There was no lipstick on the collar, no hotel receipt left out in the open. But the pattern was there, hiding in plain sight. All the pieces were laid out now like a puzzle I didn't want to finish. But I had to. And when I did, I realized something worse than being lied to. I had let it happen. I'd seen the cracks. I'd heard the excuses. I'd noticed the shifts in her behavior. But every time I had felt that little voice whisper in the back of my mind, "This doesn't feel right," I'd shut it down, buried it, because the alternative was too painful. Admitting that maybe, just maybe, the person I loved wasn't loving me back the way I thought. I wanted to believe she was just tired, or stressed, or drifting a little, that it would pass, that we'd fix it when life slowed down. But what if I'd already lost her? What if she'd already handed her love, our life, to someone else? I stared at the computer screen for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't punch the desk. There was no explosion, just a long, hollow stillness. I minimized the spreadsheet, opened a new tab, ordered a small wireless camera. Overnight shipping. Nothing fancy, just something subtle, something that wouldn't be noticed. The guest room door had been locked. She had lied, and I needed to know why. They say if you're looking for something hard enough, you'll find it. I wasn't ready for what I found. I didn't sleep much after that night. June lay curled beside me, her breath soft and even, like none of it existed. Like the world she lived in wasn't cracking beneath our feet. I stared at the ceiling until the dark turned to gray and then into morning light. Every sound she made only reminded me how little I actually knew about her anymore. By noon the next day, I had installed the camera. I told June I had a supplier meeting in Atlanta. Left the house early, suit on, briefcase in hand. But I parked around the corner, waited until she left for Pilates, and circled back. I let myself in through the back door and moved fast. The device was no bigger than a quarter. It looked like a smoke detector and came with magnetic mounts. I placed it in the upper corner of the guest room, angled toward the bed. It recorded to a micro SD card, motion-activated, with time-stamped clips. The kind of thing you'd use for a nanny cam. Discreet, quiet, unassuming. I tested it. Left. Came back. Played the footage. It worked. And then I waited. Over the next 2 days, nothing happened. June cleaned, folded laundry, chatted on the phone, innocent, mundane things. The camera caught her making the bed and setting out a new candle on the nightstand. She even fluffed the pillows and laid out fresh towels. At one point, she adjusted the curtains and sprayed some kind of room mist in the air. Lavender, probably. By the end of the second day, I almost convinced myself I was being paranoid. That I'd let a few disconnected details mutate into something darker. That maybe this was just stress and projection. But on the third day, I told her I had an all-day warehouse site visit across the state. I kissed her on the forehead like I always did and walked out the door. I didn't go to the warehouse. Instead, I drove a mile away to a diner with strong coffee, open Wi-Fi, and a clear view of our street from the back lot. I waited. At 10:42 a.m., She left. Sunglasses, hair up, workout bag in hand. She was gone for less than 15 minutes. When she returned, she wasn't alone. I recognized him before he even reached the porch. Tall, clean-cut, navy blue suit, confident gait, the kind of man who walks like the sidewalk owes him something. He carried himself like someone who didn't expect to be caught because he probably hadn't been. Until now. She opened the door, smiled, let him in. No hesitation. No looking over her shoulder. I waited an hour before going home. When I walked through the door, the house smelled faintly of her perfume. The citrusy kind she wore when we were first dating. The guest room door was open. Empty. The bed was freshly made again, the candle burned halfway down. Her phone buzzed in the kitchen, face down. She greeted me like nothing happened. Dinner. Small talk. Laughter that didn't belong to either of us. Later that night, after she fell asleep, I retrieved the card. I waited until I was in my office to watch it. I locked the door not because she'd come in, but because some part of me wanted a barrier between what I was about to see and everything else in the world. The footage started blank, just a still image of the room. Then motion. Timestamp, 11:01 a.m. He walked in first. Well-dressed. Confident. Familiar in the most sickening way. Then June. She laughed real, not forced. Closed the door behind them. I watched as she kissed him. Not a quick peck. Not a mistake. A slow, mate kiss like the kind we used to share before grocery runs and dinner parties and bills made us forget what Macy even looked like. He pulled her close. She responded without hesitation. I paused the footage. My throat was dry, but I hadn't said a word out loud. I rewound it. Watched again. Slower this time. Like I could spot the exact second she crossed the line between lost and gone. I didn't watch the whole recording. I didn't need to. What I saw was enough. More than enough. It wasn't just the physical act, it was the familiarity, the comfort. The way they moved around each other like this wasn't the first time. Like they had rhythm. Like they had history. I sat there, hands clenched so tight the plastic edges of the SD card cut into my palm. There's a moment when betrayal stops feeling hypothetical. When it stops being a suspicion or a possibility and becomes a tangible, irreversible fact. This was that moment. And it broke something in me. Not like a firework. Not loud. More like a quiet snap inside my chest. A tendon stretched too far. A rope finally splitting at the core. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just sat back, staring at the paused frame of the guest room. My guest room. The one we used for visiting family. The one where we used to lay out Christmas presents for our niece. The one she was deep cleaning when I came home early that night. It had been turned into something else. A place of betrayal. A place she chose to meet him not once, but often. It was clear now. She didn't panic when I came home early because she was caught off guard. She panicked because I'd almost seen it all. That room, that home, that marriage. They were just props in a carefully directed performance. Every laugh. Every kiss. Every, I love you. All lines in a script I didn't know I wasn't supposed to read. I played the video once more, just the beginning, and this time I noticed something else. The man. Brandon Hale. I hadn't seen him in almost 5 years. But I knew him. He'd been a consultant I hired during an expansion project for my company. We'd worked together for 6 months. He'd seemed sharp, ambitious, respectful. We'd gone for drinks once. He even met June briefly at a company mixer. Nothing about him had raised red flags. But now he was in my house. With my wife. In my bed. Something about that hit differently. This wasn't just infidelity. This felt coordinated. Personal. And I needed answers. I copied the footage onto a password-protected folder. Saved backups. Hid the originals. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't say a word. Instead, I crawled into bed beside the woman I thought I knew and listened to her breathe like she hadn't just burned our life down 6 hours earlier. And somewhere in that darkness, I made a quiet promise to myself. She wasn't just going to walk away from this. She was going to answer for every single second of it. There are betrayals of the heart, and then there are betrayals of everything else you are. I should have been furious. Should have screamed or confronted her. Thrown a chair. Maybe driven straight to wherever Brandon Hale parked his polished lie of a life and set the whole thing ablaze. But I didn't. I played it differently. Calm. Cold. Strategic. Because after what I saw on the footage, After watching my wife kiss another man in the room where my mother used to sleep when she visited, it wasn't just about love anymore. It was about the architecture of my life, and who had been hammering away at its foundation behind my back. I knew the name, Brandon Hale, and I remembered exactly how we met. 2 years into my company's growth spurt, during our expansion into commercial security systems. He had come highly recommended as a financial consultant. He's sharp, they said. Cutthroat, but clean. We hired him for a 6-month project. He built models, poked holes in my projections, smoothed out the numbers for investors. He wasn't warm, but he was good, efficient, distant in a way that felt professional. We shook hands at the end of it. That was the last I saw him, or so I thought, until now. After I confirmed it was him in the footage, those same polished shoes, that slightly tilted head, I started digging. I didn't ask June anything. I played the part of the oblivious husband, letting her kiss me on the cheek in the mornings and ask what I wanted for dinner. She didn't suspect a thing. That was almost the most insulting part. How easy she thought it would be to keep lying. She underestimated me. By the end of the week, I had cracked her laptop. She used the same password she always had, our anniversary of all things. I shouldn't have been surprised. Deceit rarely requires genius, just arrogance. What I found, it wasn't just emails. It was a blueprint for a second life. One she was building while pretending to live mine. First, there were the messages, buried in a deleted folder, but not overwritten. I restored them. Over 400 conversations between her and Brandon. Some romantic, some *Zool. But the majority, business. I sat there reading through months, years of correspondence. They'd started meeting in secret, not just for each other but for information. It started small, industry trends, client contacts. Then it escalated. June had sent him proprietary plans from our software platform. Sales forecasts, vendor lists, internal memos, things no outsider should have ever seen. She didn't just cheat on me. She sold me out. The more I read, the clearer it became. Brandon was launching his own firm, a security solutions startup. And thanks to June, he wasn't starting from scratch. He was starting with my intellectual property. And worse, he was weeks from going public. There were even drafts of their branding materials. Pitch deck. I recognized the language. Some of it was pulled word for word from our private investor briefings. The logo? A warped variation of ours, like a cruel joke. They had it all. My design, my data, my team structure are ripped out of context and rebranded like it was his. Like I was a placeholder she could just step over on the way to something new. I remember sitting back in my chair, the words blurring together. It felt like I was outside my body, watching someone else's life get disassembled in real time. How long had she been planning this? For years. That's what the earliest emails suggested. At first, it had been harmless, old friends reconnecting, she claimed in one message. Then came the shared lunches, the quick questions, the confidential documents just for review. There was even an email from me, one I had forgotten about, where I introduced her to Brandon after a company Christmas party. She had asked me about him. I handed her the *P***N she'd used to ruin me. And I never even saw it coming. I dug deeper. Found spreadsheets, ones she'd created listing my clients, their contracts, expiration dates, even notes about their frustrations or requests. Brandon had replied with revisions, tweaks, ways to undercut our pricing just enough to be irresistible. This wasn't just infidelity. It was espionage. And it was personal. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I'd ever felt. She knew how much that business meant to me. She'd been there since day one, when I was working out of a windowless office in a strip mall eating ramen while coding late into the night. She'd encouraged me, stayed up with me, told me I was building something that mattered, all while laying the groundwork to help someone else take it. For weeks, I'd wondered how she could lie to my face and still kiss me goodnight. Now I knew. It wasn't guilt she carried. It was confidence. Because she thought I'd never find out. She thought I was too trusting, too busy, too soft. She thought I'd never notice how the life we built was being gutted behind a smile. That night, I opened our joint financial accounts and traced every dollar. Found dozens of transfers she made from our shared savings to a separate credit card, one I didn't even know existed. She used that card for hotel rooms, business dinners, even gifts. Receipts showed charges for high-end watches, tailored shirts, wine deliveries. Brandon wasn't just her co-conspirator. He was her investment. And she was funding it with my money. I copied everything. Every email, every transaction, every piece of evidence I could gather. I sent it all to my attorney the next morning. No explanations. Just a message that said, "Prepare for war." Then I went to work. Walked through the front doors of my office like nothing had changed. Shook hands. Answered emails. Held meetings. Smiled. And during my lunch break, I filed for divorce. June was served 3 days later. She looked stunned. Genuinely shocked. As if the idea that I could beat her to the punch had never even entered her mind. She cried. Asked to talk. Said it wasn't what it looked like. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The papers spoke loud enough. But the damage wasn't done, not yet. There was still the business. Still Brandon. Still the part of me that wanted justice, not just closure. So I made a decision. If they wanted to take everything from me, they'd have to fight for it. And I don't lose fights. Not the ones that matter. I thought I was playing the lead in a story about betrayal. Turns out I'd been cast in a sequel to something much older, something far more dangerous. After I filed for divorce, the fallout came fast and heavy. June didn't fight the paperwork, not really. Her first reaction was disbelief, followed by a burst of anger that faded into manufactured regret. She left a voicemail the night after being served. I didn't answer it, but I listened. "You don't understand, okay? It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Brandon, he's not who you think. I was trying to protect you." That last part almost made me laugh. Protect me? From what? The hotel bills she hid? The documents she leaked? Or was it the man she invited into our house while I was on business trips? I didn't respond. I blocked her number instead. The next morning, an anonymous email landed in my inbox. No subject line. No greeting. Just a single sentence. "You're not done looking." Attached was a Dropbox link. Now, I'm not the kind of person who clicks unknown links. But this one wasn't random, it came from a burner address using my father's name. Not mine. Not June's. My dad's. And that detail froze me. He'd been dead since 1991. I clicked it. Inside the folder were a dozen scanned documents, newspaper clippings, black and white photographs, and 3 scanned handwritten letters. All old. All tied to a name I hadn't heard in years. Peter Mallard Construction Group. My father worked for them in the late 80s. He was a foreman, spent 20 years in the company before he died in what they called a workplace accident. A faulty beam. I was 14. I remembered the funeral, the hushed tones, the unopened investigations. I also remembered how quickly everything vanished afterward. His pension. His files. His name scrubbed from the company website like he'd never existed. Until now. I started reading the letters. They were written by my father to someone named Gerald Vance, his old coworker, I guessed. Dated just a few months before the accident. In them, my father expressed concerns about money being funneled through shell subcontractors, false invoices, and safety reports being doctored. He mentioned refusing to sign off on a structure in Augusta that was rigged from the inside out. One line hit me square in the chest. "If something happens to me, it won't be an accident. You know it. I know it. Don't let them bury me without a name." At the bottom of the third letter was a signature I hadn't seen in over 30 years. "Dad." I sat there, hands shaking. My throat dry. And then I looked back at the envelope's metadata. The Dropbox was linked to a safety deposit box number from a bank downtown. There was a code embedded in the footer of one scanned photo, numbers, and letters in a format I recognized as a KeyPass. I called my lawyer, who also had experience with probate cases. 2 days later, I was standing in a windowless vault room holding a rusted metal box marked GV. Inside were the originals, receipts, check stubs, physical blueprints, handwritten notes, and a worn photo of my father in a hard hat standing beside a younger man with slicked back hair and a smug expression. On the back of the photo, in fading ink, someone had scrawled, "Brandon's father. Same eyes. Same smile. Same tricks." My head spun. That man, the one beside my dad, was Richard Hale, CEO of Hale Structures at the time. He was investigated for fraud in 1993 and fled the country before the indictment. Never saw a courtroom. And Brandon? Brandon Hale wasn't just my wife's affair partner. He was Richard Hale's son. That's when it hit me. This wasn't random. This wasn't two people falling into temptation. It wasn't a messy, emotional spiral that led to adultery. It was a plan. A legacy, even. Brandon didn't just want to destroy my business. He wanted to finish what his father started. He used June to do it. She was the perfect angle, close, trusted, emotionally embedded in everything I had. Maybe he targeted her on purpose. Maybe it was convenience. Maybe she thought she was in control when she was really just the lever he pulled. I don't know. But now I understood why it all felt so familiar. So personal. Because it was. My dad had tried to blow the whistle. He died for it. They called it an accident. But I knew better now. And here I was 30 years later, walking the same path, holding the same fuse, and facing the same enemy. Only this time I had something he didn't. I had warning. I called Marvin, my brother. Told him to come over. I didn't explain why. He showed up with 2 coffees and a confused look. I laid the files out on the table. He read them all in silence. After 10 minutes, he looked up and said, "You think this was intentional? Like they planned it from the beginning?" I didn't have to answer. We both knew. He leaned back and rubbed his face. "You know what Dad would have done?" "Yeah," I said. "He'd have gone straight to the press." "But you're not going to do that, are you?" "No." "Why?" I looked at the guest room door. Still closed. Still untouched since the day I watched it all unfold on camera. "Because I'm not just trying to expose them," I said. "I'm going to bury them." Marvin nodded. Then quietly he said, "Let's make a list." So we did. A list of every document. Every copied file. Every person Brandon's company had reached out to. We flagged clients who had stopped responding to us, those we suspected had been approached with undercut deals. We mapped it all. And when we were done, Marvin looked at me and said, "This isn't just a divorce anymore." I nodded. "It's a takedown." The next few days were a blur of planning, meetings with my legal team, and private consultations with a forensic accountant. She verified everything. The funds June had diverted. The business assets misappropriated. The intellectual property lifted from secure internal drives. But she found something else too. A second company quietly incorporated in Delaware under a shell name. Listed owners? June Morgan and Brandon Hale. Established 11 months ago. Projected launch date? 2 weeks from now. It was all there. Registered trademarks. A website in development. A beta testing site under Brandon's domain. They were going to flip the switch. Make it real. Go live. Take everything. And now I had 2 choices. Let it happen, then sue. Burn the whole thing down before they had the chance. Guess which one I chose? I filed for divorce, served her with evidence, and froze every joint account. She tried to cry her way back in letters, voicemails, begging me to hear her out, but I wasn't interested. She didn't just cheat on me. She dismantled my trust, my business, my life. I kept the house, the company, and most of the assets. She left with a single suitcase. Our grandson Taylor stayed with me. Mia, still too young to understand, went with her, but I knew the truth about her bloodline. I didn't hate June. I just couldn't look at her without seeing everything she took from me. Forgiveness? That was a door I'd welded shut. What she destroyed couldn't be rebuilt. I let go, not out of rage, but because there was nothing left worth holding on to. Brandon was arrested. Fraud, theft, conspiracy, it all stuck. June disappeared from the public eye. I rebranded the company, relocated, and rebuilt. Taylor stayed close, a reminder that some things could still grow in the ashes. I no longer believed in second chances. Just boundaries. The final anonymous message read, "This is only the beginning." I deleted it without blinking. Whoever they were late. I had already started over, alone, clear-eyed, and unafraid.